Here we're going to look at some quadratic functions and find their x and y intercepts. So to find an x-intercept, set f of x equal to 0 or set y equal to 0, since y and f of x are the same thing. To find an x-intercept, we're going to make the y value 0 and solve for the roots of the equation. So we can do this by factoring or using something called a quadratic formula. For these first few examples, I'm going to show you how to factor them. So we have to make one side 0 in order to start factoring, and then we know that if two numbers multiply to be 0, then at least one of them, or both, must also equal 0, right? 2 times 10 is not 0, because neither of those are 0, but 0 times 10 is 0. So we're going to make one side 0 and make at least one of the factors 0, if not both, and they will definitely multiply to be 0. So looking at this, if we want to first find our y-intercept, to find a y-intercept, you want to set x equal to 0, right? If you think about an xy chart here, if you want to touch the y-axis and have a y-intercept, that x value must be 0. So we're going to set x equal to 0, and we're just going to plug in m of 0, which would be 0 squared minus 4 times 0 minus 45. So our y-intercept would be negative 45. Or as a point, x is 0, y is negative 45. There's our y-intercept. That one's the faster one. We're going to also find x-intercepts. To find an x-intercept, set y equal to 0, right? If you want to touch on your x and y axis over here, if you want to touch the x axis, you have to have a y value of 0. So we're going to take that y value and make it 0. 0 is equal to x squared minus 4x minus 45. And we're going to factor that to see what numbers we could plug in here and make it 0. So when I factor this, I must have a positive times a negative in order to multiply to be a negative 45. And I want to choose numbers that add up to be a negative 4. So that tells me the bigger factor is going to be the negative 1. So factors of 45 that differ by 4. So I'm going to have a negative 9 plus 5 will give you that negative 4 as my middle term. Well, these two numbers can only multiply to be 0 as long as one of them is 0. I want to see what makes x plus 5 0 and what makes x minus 9 0. Because as long as one of these is 0, they will multiply to be 0. So what makes x plus 5 0? Well, subtract 5, your x-intercept would be negative 5. Or add 9, your other x-intercept is positive 9. Or as points, we would say negative 5, 0, 9, 0 as our x-intercepts. So the two x values with a y value of 0.